Thank you very much. Thank you also for the invitation. I'm very glad to share this stage with both Akis and Goran. I know their work and I respect what they do very much. Basically, my analysis is related to what Goran just said. And I would also like to draw some insight from the theories of international relations and foreign policy analysis as a theoretical field that can possibly help us how to devise policy mechanisms for changing the bitter reality we live in. Practically, let me firstly read the title of the topic we have today. It's the effects of Skopje on the intra-regional foreign policies, countering challenges through policy mechanisms conceived beyond the discourses of national history. The way the topic is being framed is related to the realm of policy analysis. It's an analytical, but also pretty much empirical field of study, coming from the realm in general, political science, sociology, anthropology, possibly as well, which is also very much descriptive in nature. You know, the policy analysts approach certain problematic. You know, they try to describe it, and they try to offer policy mechanisms to politicians finally, because they have the final, role in proposing, devising, foreign policy. I'm not from the field of policy analysis. I come from the field of political international theory. I truly, to be honest, thinking this morning about the topic we have, realized hastily that I have no clue what political mechanisms can be proposed to the politicians in order to change their reality, as I said. But then I tried to contextualize, which is basically approaching theory, and turn to the field of international relations, as I said, and the field of foreign policy analysis, which is a subfield of this. International relations is more structuralist, functionalist approach toward the international relations, while foreign policy analysis is actor-driven analysis. It takes specific countries, Macedonia, Greece, or whatever, tries to understand their political context, and on the basis of this tries to understand their foreign policy action. So we're talking about foreign policy action here. So now, if you allow me, I would like to make just a slight review of the two major schools within the foreign policy analysis. That is which is related also to social theory in general. You have rationalist approaches, with mainstream there, obviously mainstream approaches, and you have culturalist, social constructivist, critical approaches. The first ones are pretty much materialist. Their analysis is action-driven. They take states as egoistic self-help entities. They analyze foreign policy as a policy which has a highest, it enters in the realm of hard politics. And they say every single country has certain given interests. They're taken as given, they're not preconceived or they're not socially constructed, They have given interests and they do what can do to help themselves in order to achieve their interests, Obviously, when you take our context, rational approaches are absolutely, in my view, helpless, or they're not helpful, at least, They're power-oriented. They give some insights, very superficial, on the way foreign policy is being driven, but they do not scratch behind the core, So therefore we have the culturalist approaches. They think that the foreign policy action is they're idealist, pretty much. It is driven by ideas, identities, and ideologies. And basically this is what we have here. We have issues very much related to our cultural, ideational context. very much related to our self-use, very much related to the way we perceive ourselves on a state, collective level, and also on an international, individual actor level. So, what Goran explained very nicely, and what we all talked about in the past 2 or 3 days, basically, the notion of identity is pretty much hegemonial in the public discourse. Ethnocentrism is a dominant ideology, both in the political realm and the academic realm. This is very important. All the mainstream academicians, those who are very much related to the politicians in power, think in ethnocentrist terms. You know. This behavior can be also related to political realism, stating our foreign policy is an area of highest national interest, so we can't allow ourselves to be critical or deconstructive or self-denying in a way, because our neighbors do not do that. You know? Which leads me to a book I read some years ago, written by a very prominent conservative philosopher here in Macedonia, Macedonian Catachresis, which is, in my view, epistemologically very shaky analysis, because he starts from a post-structuralist perspective, but then draws on the right Hegelianism, and he devises the strategy of browsability that can be drawing on modernist and post-modernist approaches, should do everything to stabilize the notion of Macedonian identity in order to fight the Greek notion of identity, to the Bulgarian, Albanian, Serbian, and whatsoever. Basically, he admits, I'm pretty much aware that critical approaches are right, and I'm pretty much aware that the nation is a social construction, you know. But when it comes to the realm of foreign policy, this is useless, you know, because we live in a context, he contextualized things in structural terms. He said, I cannot be postmodern if my Greek colleague is absolutely modernist. And this is the person who sits next to the Prime Minister, for instance, and he's very influential. He might be, maybe I'm mistaken, but I think he's very much influential, and he belongs to the epistemic community that should be, you know, critical, but also helpful in understanding the issue. So now, this is as far as theories, international theories are concerned. I try to interpret the broader theoretical context, which is not always helpful. Very often it is not at all. At least when we think in practical terms. And then I concluded somehow that culturalist approaches are effective in understanding the problematic we are talking about. But this is not the issue we have today. The issue is how to devise policy mechanisms, or what policy mechanisms to propose to the politicians in order to change the reality. Now, I also turn to the notion of public sphere. Goran just mentioned pretty much effective concept developed by Habermas and his pupils. This is the area where the discourses are happening, where the subject is being constituted, and basically what we can do in this area of public reality is to intervene as epistemic community, as intellectuals, or as people, whatever, and to try to present, you know, mainstreamize, if it's possible, which is not, you know, and in the end to persuade politicians that they should do what we think is right, you know. This is the notion of public sphere. And then also, turn again to the notion, to the concept of epistemic communities, also very much analyzed, kind of real in the theory of international relations, is like how academics can help change foreign policy, or policy in general. So, Then, to make it simple, I would say, what epistemic communities? Which epistemic communities? There is a mainstream academia, which is powerful, which is everywhere, which is based at the state universities, based at the Academy of Science, you know, and it's very much close to the political circles. And as I said, they think in ethnocentric terms, you know. This is a political academia. This is not a real academia in a way, you know, if you go deeper. This is not academia. And everywhere in the Balkans, the mainstream academia is a political academia, you know. They think that the epistemic layer they have is first national interest, then search for the truth, you know, which is bullshit, you know, makes no sense, you know. This is not a real academia, you know. But in the end, if it's mainstreamized to that extent, it is accepted as truthful, you know. One need not be a philosopher to grasp this situation. So what can critical academia do? Nothing, in my view. I'm very much pessimistic. Maybe Akis can also confirm as well after me. Critical academia, 40 years after the sociological, linguistic terms in social sciences, it's here, do not know it, and even not accepted in the West itself. It's much more influential, much more developed, you know. When it comes to policy analysis, then what counts is the mainstream, and that's it, you know. So now, being pessimistic in this sense, I would like to slightly finish also addressing the political elites in the Balkans, in Macedonia or Greece, which are not that clever, not at least as their mainstream academic counterparts, you know. When it comes to the real foreign policy, again, you know, they distinguish between lower and higher policy, and high policy interests, you know. Social policy is a policy of lower interest, which should be the other way around, you know. But foreign policy enters the field of high politics, you know. And then when you have strategies in Israel, these are not easily changeable, you know. You can't just change overnight and say, well, yeah, fuck it, we are all socially constructed, and then let's devise different politics, let's forget about ethnocentrism, you know. The politicians will never do it, because they think not only in individualists, they think in structuralist terms, you know. And then if you follow the Macedonian political narrative, you know, in the past 6 years as well, they always say, well, look what the Greeks do, why not doing it as well, you know? And therefore we have, ever since 2006, this gradual change of our perception of national identity and our perception of our nationalism, which was before that sort of a defensive, nationalism is a nationalism as well, in any sense, but it was posited as defensive towards the Greek, Serbian, Bulgarian, Albanian nationalism. But this new political stream, ever since 2006, addressed the issue in a way that our neighbors had done it before. They said, well, we should also implement forms of offensive, they do not call it nationalism, they call it offensive, patriotism. Offensive is aggressive, let's put it like that. Yeah. Offensive, attacking, you know. So let's be on an equal standing with Greeks or with Bulgarians, which in my view is absolutely wrong. You know? I mean, it's absolutely wrong approach. So to conclude, maybe in the course of the discussion we will turn to debating policy mechanism. My view was more theoretical rather than political, analytical, whatever. But basically, what I thought, what can we do to develop a counter-hegemonial narrative? Yeah, we have this, we know this mechanism, but how can you do it with the 5 or 10 people? It's another issue. How to make politicians aware, you know, to change their politics. It's absolutely difficult because, as I said, they think in structuralist terms, and they think that the priority of the national interest is something they cannot change very easily, or give up. And then the intermedia person, let's say, I was talking about the epistemic communities, the mainstream one, how to persuade them that we should make a general change. It's difficult. Many of them, those of them who are a bit more book learned, I don't want to be cynical here, but most of them are not. Those who read books, those who read critical books, those who read deep analysis, admit, I admit that there is an ethnocentrism, that the national identity is constructed and reconstructed continually, that there's a dialectic between the nationalisms in the Balkans, and there's a clash of identities, but in the end, they also think like political realists. They think like politicians. They say, we know, but we cannot change it. If the Greeks don't do, the Bulgarians don't mean it. So this was my final inference, and I hope we can continue and then speak more in practical rather than theoretical terms. Thank you.